Let's talk about mature self leadership, which is also a great prerequisite for being a leader in the world, in the workspace, and in relationships where you are in. I was contemplating on what would be the main qualities that would make someone a mature, a leader that I love and respect, which is also something that I want to strive toward and develop those qualities. And I came up with 6 ways to distinguish, or 6 ways to say that if I am doing these things, if I'm behaving these ways, then I consider myself a mature leader. And I would also apply this to someone that I want to respect and work with. This idea of mature leadership came from discussions with my clients about how they would like to work with other managers and leaders who they really love and respect and want to work with, and also how I would like to lead my life with this leadership. And I thought if I can put these 6 elements together that we can really objectively measure, and therefore say that, okay, if we're doing these things, we are on a great track to being the leader that probably many of us want to be in our own lives and in workspace as well. So, you're ready to start the mature leadership? So, here is the first one. The first one that I really value, and I'm learning how to do this in my own life and in my own journey of making $1 million level impact, is expecting complications. And this is one of the hardest one, I feel, but also the most important one, because oftentimes I have worked with leaders, and also I have myself experienced how we expect things to work a certain way. And then when it doesn't, which is usually the case when things don't go the way we thought it would, and then we have a lot of drama and problems around it, and then we just stay in a lot of the frustration, a lot of the handling drama of people, blaming, and all of those things, which take up a lot of resources, but also which has the potential to destroy teams and team spirit, and also feeling like we're not cut out for this kind of thing. But think of all the leaders that you desire, admire, or leaders that you would like to be one yourself. Think of all of those leaders. What they have in common is that they're not affected by those complications. And even if they are, they still don't shy away from it, or they don't get afraid of it, or they don't just avoid it and say, okay, let's just go do the things that are easier, and then going and doing things easier. That's not the leader we want to be, right? So the leader that we respect and we love probably have that thing in common, which is not only they expect that things will get complicated or not go according to a plan, and also knowing that if that happens, then here are the things that we will do, and then think about several steps ahead if necessary, or they have no problem having those hard decisions or hard conversations, to stand by the values that we have. So that's why I would really put this as the first behavior, if you will, is to expect that there will always be complications, and most importantly, expect that we can handle it. So, in my own life, the way that this behavior shows up is whatever the goal that I'm pursuing, whatever the goal that I'm pursuing with my clients, we always take into account what things that can go wrong and how do we work through that and how do we solve that versus hoping things won't go anything wrong, hoping that everything will be okay, and hoping that we will, in case things will go very bad or things will get hard, we will just drop or quit and then go and do something else, or blame everyone else around so that we don't need to look at what the actual issues are, right? So that's why I would say the first element of expecting complications and also knowing that you can handle it is the main character of a mature leader. The second character of a mature leader is emotional intelligence. And by emotional intelligence, I mean several things. One, it means feeling all of the shitty feelings and also being able to do that for other people if necessary, meaning being there for other people and listening through what's happening. So that's one element. The other element is knowing that these emotions are part of being human and nothing has gone wrong, right? This will be important for another element that I will be talking about. But the more we start looking at our thoughts around the complications not going the way we want to, our feelings around them, if we look at it more as this is how it's supposed to happen and there's no problem with it, then going through them becomes so much easier rather than feeling like, oh my God, this is not how it's supposed to be. This is not what we said we would do, and all of those things that will lead to drama and blaming and all of those things that complicate the matter even further, right? So, therefore, I would say emotional intelligence of a mature leader, especially if you are learning to lead yourself, especially if you are learning to become a leader of your own life and leader of your team, then this is the skill to learn for sure, which is the emotional intelligence that I would summarize as. So, the behaviors that you can really see objectively in people when someone is emotionally intelligent is them being able to process through their own emotions, but also having the capacity and ability to listen to others and be there for others when needed, and also having that or creating that safe space for others to be able to express and go through those emotions if necessary. So, this is the emotional intelligence part of not only being the resilient leader, but also not making the emotions mean that something has gone wrong, but knowing that this is part of being human. And in every complication that we encounter, we're likely to have those emotions, but also we are able to go through them instead of compromising our value system, right? Because if we're not able to handle those emotions and if we're not able to handle other people's emotions, then it's very likely that we're going to give up on our values of what we stand for. And therefore, we keep avoiding hard conversations, we keep avoiding hard decisions, or we keep avoiding looking at what are the next steps need to be in those complications. And that's what makes us then not the leader that we want to be, because we are then not really walking the talk that we actually want to expect from every leader, right? We expect from every leader that we really respect and love, that they are walking the talk of what they're saying. And this is the third element that I want to come to, is walking the talk. If we operationalize it or if we make it very objective behavior, then whatever we are saying that we stand by as our values, then we're actually also implementing it. right? So, for instance, let's say that we're saying our value is freedom in or free expression of opinion in the workplace, as an example. This is our value, let's say. Then, obviously, someone saying hard things is also part of that, standing by the value and listening to those hard conversations. And of course, hard conversations doesn't mean offensive or abusive or anything illegal. But if we're saying that we are inclusive and open to all the opinions, then obviously walking the talk means that we are able to listen, we're able to engage, we're able to discuss and debate if necessary without making it a problem, right? So therefore, another way that walking the talk objectively that you can see is, if you are saying that you care about the cause, then obviously you then being cynical and sarcastic and skeptical about it contradicts that you are believing in the cause, right? So you can see that walking the talk is such an interesting character or a trait or element of being a mature leader. Is if you're saying you do really care about this cause, you are really believing in the cause, then you acting then as a sarcastic person who says, well, who cares anyway, it won't work anyway, then obviously you're not walking the talk, right? You're just saying that I do believe, but that's just the theoretical thing. In practice, this is my behavior. Do you see how they don't match each other? And because they don't match each other, then no matter what you say, other people will not buy what you're saying because you're not consistent with yourself. You're saying on the one hand one thing, but your behavior is showing something else. Another way that you can walk the talk is if you say this is our value, for instance, inclusive workplace, right? A lot of people probably in humanitarian sector heard about this being an inclusive workplace, but then when it comes to some colleagues who are who are expressing their critical views in the workplace, in the most constructive way, in the most consistent way, some leaders are not able to listen to it, right? Because it feels like these critical views are going against their like going against them as a person, or it's a personal attack, and therefore they're not standing by their values of creating inclusive space for all inclusive opinions, meaning for all opinions, not only the great opinions of the operation, but also the critical ones. So walking the talk would be then creating space for all of those opinions. That's the third element of a mature leader in leading self, but also others. And the fourth one that I have termed as no BCDS. This is my acronym, if you will. And no BCDS stands for B is no blaming, C is no complaining, D is no drama, and S is no stress. Now, let me explain a bit why I came up with it and why I'm really seeing the value of how not engaging in such behavior makes someone a mature self leader or mature leader. The first one is no blaming. This is one of the often contested topics that my clients have when we discuss the topic of blaming. And the reason why they think that it's the world can't function without blaming. And as much as I hear them, here is why it makes it such a difficult thing as a leader if you stay on the blaming journey. Blaming is essentially, on the one hand, saying we need to punish you for pointing fingers at you if we're blaming someone. Or if we're blaming ourselves, again, we need to point fingers at me, at us, and punish us for you doing this. And so that we are really distracted from the actual matter as to why and how this problem happened in the first place. And as much as we want to keep pointing fingers and keep trying to hold accountable, so to say, someone for something that they did, it is so not useful in the process of solving any problem. Like, I have never seen anyone yet who blames someone so much or themselves so much to a point that they solve the problem. They could have easily solved that problem without blaming the other person or yourself easily. In other words, you could hold someone accountable and yourself accountable for whatever the thing that happened without blaming anyone for it. But oftentimes our psyche tricks us to believing that something to be solved only if we can blame someone, or something that we can solve better or more efficiently if we can blame ourselves, as an example. Or some people will even argue with me that they can't grow in their own journey, whatever that journey is, if they don't blame themselves, or if they're not harsh on themselves, or if they don't hold themselves to a higher standard. And I always ask them, can you hold yourself to a higher standard without blaming yourself? And they will say, probably. Then the question is, why do the blaming? And somehow I think people conflate or misunderstand that if we don't blame, somehow we don't hold people accountable, right? So, in other words, holding someone accountable means blaming. But I think it might be time for us to really look at what is the blaming part and what is the holding accountable part, and separate one from the other. So, in my experience of me learning to be a mature leader in my own life, I have seen blaming is something like, I am judging you for you doing things not the way that we agreed or not the way that I expected you to. And I'm frustrated with you or angry with you or whatever the emotions that I have with you. The same goes for my self blame as well. And I talk about this in so many different episodes that I do, so therefore I don't want to go into so much detail. But what I have also found to be so interesting is that the more I do that, engage in that frustration, in that anger, in that how could you and why did you and all of those blaming things, it's going to take longer. It's going to make me frustrated more. It's probably going to make the other person even more frustrated, because no one, I think, usually at least in the workplace, especially, sitting around and saying, okay, how can I mess up this thing today? So, therefore, either way, we're just not solving the problem and not even getting into understanding why that problem happened in the first place, if we are staying in the frustration of blaming and anger of blaming and all of those. So therefore, the policy that I'm taking in my own life very seriously is no blame policy. Instead, I want to go into immediately solving it or immediately discussing with the other person how it came about and what we can do about it. And is there a way we can solve it or not? And maybe sometimes it's not even necessary to solve it. Who knows, right? Depending on the context. Now, the complaining and the drama part I talked about a lot, so I don't need to go into detail. But the way that I don't like the drama and the complaining part is because it just makes me feel so powerless, as if to say, okay, the only way I can express my powerlessness is by complaining and dramatizing. And I don't like this about myself. And I also don't like solving things and problems and leading certain situations from the powerless place. And it somehow it contradicts the true nature of human beings, I believe. And human beings by true nature are very powerful, resourceful humans, and therefore staying in that powerlessness contradicts that true nature and makes it that makes any situation more exacerbated and more problematic and like a lot harder than it could have been any other way. Therefore, I have been learning how not to complain. I haven't complained, I think, in a long time, so I feel good about it. And also dramatizing, I'm learning very hard not to dramatize. So that's the work I'm doing. Now, the no stress part is an interesting one because I think oftentimes in leadership positions or in the humanitarian work in general, stress is accepted as something that's so normal and maybe even revered. And if you're not stressed and if you're not running around, if you're not busy, then you must not be working. And if you're working, then you must be stressed. And obviously, this is how it's supposed to be, right? But then we also know that the chronic stress is the cause of many health problems. And maybe the temporary on and off stress might be useful in some way to feel alive and to feel good that we're doing something. But at the same time, I think oftentimes we're really looking at stressed out leaders who are trying to meet the pressures and expectations of others, at the same time not really having time for themselves and their own self-care, and not really having time for their team members, right? So therefore the problem with the stress, especially if it's a chronic stress, is that it will become more of a priority, meaning that we will rather keep stressing around something instead of solving the cause of and systemic cause of why we're stressed all the time, right? So there is always this danger of making the stress so normal in our lives that we are not really looking at why we're stressed out all the time and how that's not sustainable, and more importantly, how that will lead to unsafe environments, which we would call toxic environments, where people don't really have time to discuss things, to reflect on things, to express what's really going on for them, not to have that safety to really be honest and say, okay, this is not working, right? So instead, we will just keep covering with stress everything all the time to a point that we're not able to even look at why are we stressed all of the time. So my mature self-leadership criteria, the fourth criteria that I talked about, is really about how can we not get into chronic stress all of the time, and if we are and if we recognize it, then what are the things that we need to be solving as leaders so that we no longer have that all of the time, right? So therefore, no BCDS. I don't know if it sounds a long thing. Policy that I'm proposing is really about, okay, if we're not allowed to blame, or if we're not allowing ourselves, I should say, if we're not allowing ourselves to blame someone or ourselves, if we're not allowing ourselves to complain or dramatize or stressed out the whole time, then what are the problems we need to be solving and what are the ways we need to be leading? And then focusing on that, I find is the most effective way to be the leader we want in the workplace or in our own lives. Then the fifth criteria that I love personally, which is the full ownership. And full ownership, I always talked about in other episodes, but here I want to just give you an overview since I feel like it's more time than I usually talk about. So full ownership for me means that full ownership of my thought and belief processes, meaning how I'm thinking and believing about certain things, and then deciding if these ways of doing things are serving me. Full ownership means feeling and why I'm feeling and how I'm feeling instead of just saying, oh, you made me feel this way, and then keep the blame with someone else and not take the responsibility. Because I believe emotional state is we are in charge of our own emotional state and other people are in charge of their own emotional state, and therefore one of the best ways to keep the emotional hygiene is by really looking at, okay, how am I feeling or how am I creating this feeling and why is such a crucial way of being a mature leader. And then the full ownership of my actions, right? So, what are the actions that I'm taking? What are the actions I'm not taking? And what are the actions that are having impact on other people? What are the actions that I'm taking are not having impact that maybe I wanted to? So, all of this is coming to full ownership of how I behave at workplace or in my relationship. What is the energy I'm in? How is the way that I'm seeing myself, my identity? All of this is coming from me recognizing who I am and who I want to be instead of using my circumstances or other people's behaviors to say, oh, because of them, I couldn't be this person, right? And the sixth element is the decision making. And this is one of the main, I would say, elements of leaders that we probably love. But also, we know many leaders who are not good at making decisions or who delay decisions. So, therefore, I, for myself at least, if I'm leading my life in the mature leadership way, then I really want to make decisions from a powerful place of knowing what is it that I want and how and what are the impacts I'm creating, and then making decisions towards those outcomes. Okay, I see there might be interesting comments I can see. Okay. I hope that these 6 elements have been helpful for you also to scan through your own self leadership in your life, in your relationships, in your workplace, and then look at, do you have any of these elements? If you like them, if you would like to adopt them. And if you do, then amazing. If you don't, what are the things that need to be changed for you to feel you are leading your life and relationships and profession in the most mature way, and leading in the way that other people would also admire and say, yes, this is how I would like to be a leader in my own life and in my team. And if you need help with developing or working on them, come coach with me. I would love to do that. Okay, my dears, have a beautiful week, and I'll talk to you